Attorney General Pam Bondi just walked into the Senate Judiciary Committee. This was going to be another boring oversight hearing. It wasn't. This was the annual Justice Oversight meeting, but the timing made it explosive. And what Bondi said out loud? That's the part that's going to haunt her, not what she dodged. So listen, if you're sick of the fake nothing to see here coverage, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and come with me, because this one is not spin. This is receipts. Bondi opens the hearing with this big chest outline. The two-tier justice system is over. Okay, strong words. But the documents that hit the surface right after that, they scream the opposite. The two-tier system didn't end. It just changed clothes. And now Bondi isn't fighting it. Bondi is standing in the middle of it like the mascot. That's the sick part. The person who told you it's over is now the loudest symbol of exactly what she claimed to end. And here's why the legal world is buzzing. Bondi didn't just say something unpopular. She basically admitted to something that looks illegal. And if that's true, this doesn't end with bad optics. This ends with charges, courtrooms, and a career going up in flames. Now let's set the stage, because the background matters. This hearing happened just days after former FBI Director James Comey got indicted by a federal grand jury. You think that's random? No chance. Democratic senators are saying the Justice Department has been turned into a weapon used to punish the president's enemies. And the Comey indictment poured gasoline on that fire, because Comey has been one of Donald Trump's most well-known critics. So when Bondi shows up at this hearing, people aren't asking polite questions. They're looking her dead in the face like, are you running justice? Or are you running a hit list? And the senators didn't hold back. They grilled her on the Epstein files. They hammered her on the so-called client list. They went after the idea of January 6 defendants being hired by the DOJ. They questioned National Guard deployments into American cities. All serious, all heavy. And yeah, there was a heated clash with Senator Dick Durbin over the National Guard, with Durbin warning they were pushing the Constitution to the edge. But none of that hit as hard as what came next, because the real bomb isn't the arguing. The real bomb is the paper trail. According to court documents dated November 10th, 2025, and reported by Law and Crime, Bondi authorized a prosecutor to run politically sensitive cases aimed at the president's political opponents. Read that again. A prosecutor. Politically sensitive cases, opponents. And here's the problem that turns this from scandal into a possible crime. That prosecutor was not properly appointed under the U.S. Constitution. This is not some oops, forgot to check a box situation. The appointments clause exists for a reason. Certain federal officials have to be appointed through clear steps, nomination, Senate confirmation, or a legal process for lower level roles. Those rules aren't guidelines. They're guardrails. They exist to stop exactly this: powerful people picking loyal operators and unleashing them with zero oversight. This isn't new. This has been the law for over 200 years. So when the flaw got exposed, those indictments were suddenly in danger. The whole thing could have fallen apart in court. Months of work, gone. And what does Bondi do? Does she admit the mistake and fix it the legal way? No. She tries to fix the past. She signs documents later, then backdates them, so it looks like the prosecutor was properly appointed from day one. That's not cleaning up paperwork. That's changing the timeline. That's creating a fake history to cover a constitutional violation. And I want you to tell me, because this is where the mask slips, do you think that's an administrative error, or do you think that's a cover-up? Drop your take in the comments, because I'm telling you right now, normal people do not backdate documents for fun. Now, here's the part that makes it even worse. The Department of Justice itself acknowledged the issue. In court filings opposing Bondi's position, DOJ attorneys said this, word for word: the attempt to retroactively validate the appointment was unauthorized. Unauthorized. That word is a hammer, because now it's not just critics saying this looks wrong. It's her own department saying you didn't have the authority to do that. That changes everything. Because once the government admits the constitutional problem and says the fix was unauthorized, we're not talking about carelessness anymore. We're talking about intent. And intent is the line between messy incompetence and criminal exposure. And let's be real, Bondi isn't new to this. She's a lawyer, a former Florida attorney general, a longtime prosecutor. She knows what the appointments clause is. So when someone at that level plays games with official documents, it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like a decision. And legal experts are saying this is rare for a reason. Normally, if something like this happens, it's some lower-level staffer who messed up and nobody catches it. But here, the country's top law enforcement figure appears to have stepped over the Constitution on purpose. So what are we looking at? Legal analysts are floating serious charges. One, obstruction of justice. Backdating documents to hide a constitutional defect during active cases. That can fit obstruction. You don't need movie-style intimidation. You just need actions meant to block the truth from coming out. And obstruction isn't a slap on the wrist. It could be up to 20 years per count. Per count. And if there are multiple documents, that can stack. Two, abuse of office. Using the power of the Attorney General to push politically motivated prosecutions while knowingly breaking constitutional rules. Courts take that seriously, especially when it's done by someone at the top. Three, conspiracy to deprive constitutional rights under color of law. That's the legal phrase for officials using their power to violate the Constitution while acting like it's official business. If Bondi worked with others to push these cases forward while knowing the appointment was unconstitutional, that's not just ugly, that's dangerous. Each one of these can carry heavy prison time. And when you start stacking counts, the numbers get ugly fast. This is how 20 years turns into the rest of your life. And here's another brutal detail. The higher you are, the worse it gets. Federal sentencing guidelines recognize abuse of a position of trust. Bondi wasn't some random staffer. She was the Attorney General, top cop, top lawyer, the person who's supposed to protect the Constitution. That doesn't protect her. It makes it worse. Judges don't look at that and say, poor thing. Judges look at that and say, you knew better. Now add one more layer. State charges. Some of the alleged behavior, like falsifying official documents, can violate state law too. And state charges don't vanish with a presidential pardon. That's key. Even if someone waved a federal pardon like a magic wand, state prosecutors could still come after her. That's why analysts say this situation is uniquely risky. The exits are limited, and this is exactly why the story needs daylight. Not whispers, not sources say, daylight. Now, politically, Bondi has been a lightning rod since day one. Democrats have accused her for years of bending the Justice Department to serve the president, going after critics, protecting allies. Until now, it was mostly politics. Claims and denials. Noise. But what changed everything is this. Documented constitutional problems tied to her actions, backed up by signatures, dates, and the DOJ's own lawyers calling the move unauthorized. That's not spin. That's a record. And once it's in court filings, party loyalty doesn't matter. It is the record. That's why you're seeing bipartisan anger growing. Even some conservative constitutional voices, people who usually defend broad executive power, are starting to step back and say, no, not this. When the usual defenders stop defending, that tells you how bad it looks. So what happens next? Prosecutors have options, and none of them are clean. They can try to avoid charges and hide behind political sensitivity. But the stronger the evidence gets, the harder that is to sell, especially as public pressure rises. They can bring charges and offer a plea deal for cooperation. Honestly, that may be the most likely path. Or they can go for a full indictment and let a jury decide. That's the high-risk route. Because if a plea deal happens, it probably comes with a price. Bondi has to talk. She has to point fingers. She has to testify against others. And when the threat on the table starts looking like life in prison, people suddenly get very honest. But if she decides to fight it in court, the risk multiplies. Juries don't tend to go soft on officials accused of abusing power. And judges often hit harder after a trial than they do in a negotiated deal. This is real stakes. Now, here's the bigger picture, and it matters. If a current or former attorney general gets prosecuted for constitutional violations, it sends a message that should have been obvious, but apparently isn't. No office gives you a free pass. The Constitution isn't optional. Not for you, not for me, not for the person holding the biggest badge in the country. And politically, this is going to explode either way. Supporters will scream witch hunt. Critics will say cover up if nothing happens. And either way, public trust in the justice system takes a hit because people are watching to see if the rules are real if they're only real for certain people. But one thing is already clear. Pam Bondi put herself here. Nobody forced her to sign late. Nobody forced her to backdate documents. Nobody forced her to gamble with the Constitution to keep prosecutions alive. That was her call. And now we've got court filings, public records, and DOJ lawyers saying the move is unauthorized. We got up to 20 years per count on the table. And if prosecutors stack counts, the numbers can climb fast. Life-level consequences are not a fantasy here. The story is still moving. Prosecutors are digging through evidence. Lawyers are measuring every step. And the choices made in the next few months will decide if this ends as a warning or a moment that goes down in history. So here's my closing message. Don't let this get buried. Share this video. Send it to someone who still thinks both sides are the same. And keep your eyes on this case, because the minute the public looks away, the powerful start rewriting the story again.